Alright guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, I'm going to go over an article titled Masculinity is Not Our Enemy. And guys, this is a great article that I just found, and this is written by a guy. He is a counselor as well as an author of many books dealing with this type of subject. And in this article, guys, the reason I chose this is this really put a big smile on my face, because finally, this is once again showing that the pendulum is finally, after going way too far, starting to shift back in our direction. This is still the early stages. Things have obviously gone way too far, and we all know it. I talk about it all the time. But this guy is writing this article talking about how basically all these geniuses and big shots have been labeling traditional masculinity as a negative thing. This guy's saying that, hey, traditional masculinity is a good thing. These things that boys have that are just by pure nature, these are good things to be kind of the type of men that we need to have as fathers, husbands, men in our society, and so forth. And how things have gotten way too far with trying to drive that out of boys. Because any of you guys that have boys yourself, because I know I got a lot of fathers that watch me, that have sons yourself, or grandsons, or nephews, or just, you're a teacher in school, or whatever it happens to be, you know that an effort has been made for decades to try to basically drive and mold all these traditional masculine traits out of boys and make them more feminine. And interestingly enough, make the girls more masculine. And it's completely screwed everything up, and we all know it. And this guy's finally coming out and saying, hey, this is ridiculous, and these traditional things are a good thing. So I'm going to go over his article here. It's a long one, but it's really, really good. It's really important, guys, because we got to do our part to get things, because it's gotten way too out of whack here. And after a few paragraphs, then it starts to get really good. Again, the title is Masculinity is Not Our Enemy. Starts out saying, challenging mischaracterizations of masculinity will help us raise healthy boys. Something has happened to our academic culture, the culture that teaches educators how to teach, therapists how to counsel, and parents how to parent. And is both very satisfying and somewhat frightening. Satisfying is that our academic culture is waking up to the fact that boys and men in America need our love and support. Child advocates like myself, who are parents of daughters, have been saying for years, we can't do much more for our daughters if we don't help their future husbands, our nation's sons too. Many people like you have been asking representatives of national organizations such as the National Education Association, American Psychological Association, and American Medical Association to see what is going on with boys and men. Well, we know what's going on with boys and men. We know what's been going on for decades. They've been trying to turn them into girls. As I pointed out in Saving Our Sons, this is a 2017 book he wrote, despite that there are many powerful men at the top of a society, there is also no American demographic group in which males in that group are doing better than females in the aggregate. While subsections of females are doing worse than males, there are equal or more subsections of males doing worse than females. Even the World Health Organization made this point in 2015. White females, for instance, have better health than white males and more access to health resources. They have better aggregate grades, test scores, college graduation rates, post-secondary education. They are safer at home and in school than white males. The list is very long, and the same holds true for comparisons of African American, Native American, Latino American, and Asian American males and females. When the American Psychological Association put out its guidelines for practice with boys and men in January 2019, you hear that? Guidelines for practice with boys and men. And this is the American Psychological Association. These are the ones, this is the group that's behind the, hey, let's drive traditional masculinity out of boys. These are not the ones we want to deal with. It says, I was delighted to see its clarity in pointing out male privation from high suicide rates to depression, anxiety, addiction, and violence. These are diseases that need treatment, and the APA acknowledged it. But from the first sentences of the guidelines, the APA did what so many organizations do. Fall back on the soft science of masculinity is the cause of men's problems, and removing masculinity is the solution. See? Get rid of masculinity, because that's all the problems. Bullshit. Now we got a whole society of these young weaklings. It's ridiculous. I saw a buddy of mine a few weeks ago. I hadn't seen him for months because of this COVID crap. He's a teacher, a junior high teacher, and he said flat out, the boys of this generation are just completely dense. He said his 12-year-old daughter says that the boys in her school, that they cry when they're playing basketball in gym class and they can't get a shot. Some of them cry. I mean, she can't believe it. He can't believe it. And he's like, this guy was a sergeant in the Army, and he's like, basically, get on your ass and do some push-ups, like man up. But they've been trying to drive the masculinity out of boys and make them all emotional and touch of their feelings. And now we got a bunch of crybabies. Doesn't mean that they're all like that? No, but it's more and more the case. And I'm sure if you're watching this now, wherever you are, I'm sure you've observed this in one form or another. Maybe if you live in Texas, this doesn't happen. But anywhere else other than Texas, where all men are badasses, then I'm sure you've been observing this happening. This last couple weeks, I've been asked to publicly respond to the APA report. What follows here is introductory analysis and then one of my responses. My basic point is this: even by the APA's definition, masculinity, which they suggest therapists help us remove from males, is actually a good thing. You're damn right it's a good thing. We need strong boys to become strong men. Not to become bullies, but the strong men that can lead, be good fathers, good husbands, good leaders. And that way then we have these strong guys to deal with the inevitable bullies and tough situations you got to deal with in life. Not a bunch of weaklings that can't handle themselves. Goes on, masculinity is characterized, according to the APA, by strength, stoicism, aggression, and power. Like our academic institutions in general today, the APA presents these aspects of masculinity as our nation's largest male problem. In reality, however, if boys are to survive and thrive in a complex world, they must work to be strong, and he says in parentheses, resilient, empowered, able to perform, and at appropriate times stoic in the faces of enemies and hardship. Absolutely. Aggressive, and it says in parentheses, assertive, motivated, and able to battle against bullies, as well as help us fight our wars, both abroad and at home. Powerful, success in work and in life, in leadership, and when needed, in followership to leaders who are morally sound. These qualities are intertwined with tenderness, kindness, compassion, spiritual, vitality, empathy, fortitude, character, and fatherhood. We are able to have compassion because we are strong. We're able to live from a position of kindness because we have the power to do so. Exactly. Have all these strong traits, great. But also have compassion. Don't be a dick. Don't be a bully. It'd be amazing, but instead of just trying to look at the situation, they just want to drive out all these masculine traits. And what has that gotten us? Right? As profiles of school attackers, I can't say exactly what I want to say, you guys can read it in the description, have shown us the most dangerous male is not one who is strong, aggressive, and successful. The most dangerous male is one who is depressed, unable to partner or raise children successfully, unable to earn a living, unable to care for his children. The most dangerous man is not one with power, but one who feels powerless. Our culture has focused its media on the millions or so males who have a lot of power at the top, but for the most part, forgotten the millions who don't. These millions live in the inner cities and rural farms, gentrified suburbs and city lofts, corner bars and cardboard boxes, gang crash pads and parents' basements. They are in constant fight or flight mode in a culture that has abandoned them. And every decade we see their withdrawal from and violence against society and themselves increase. In the book The Wonder of Boys, 1996, this guy's an author, I argue that masculinity is, at its heart, a husbanding vision of strength, purpose, honor, power, and compassion that culminates in the art of building a strong enough male self to be able to give that self to others in love and marriage, in parenting and mentoring, in work and life. Few people were more masculine than Martin Luther King, John F. Kennedy, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Thurgood Marshall, you name it. The men who help us most are, each in their own way, quite masculine. Now these guys didn't seem like tough guys that would go get into fights and all that, but these guys were very well-respected leaders. Regardless of your politics here, these guys were leaders. They were up in the front, doing their thing, what they had to do, and so forth. If we're going to solve issues faced by everyone's today's boys, girls, women, men, and everyone on the gender spectrum, we must challenge academic culture to go deeper into who boys are and what most people in America see very clearly. Boys need more masculinity, not less. More fathering, not less. More healthy manhood, not less. Exactly. And we must respond when people exploit narrow definitions of masculinity for their own ends. Gillette did this recently in their now famous 2-minute ad and says here, check your YouTube for the best a man can get. The ad presented men and masculinity in a basically negative light and presented normal masculine roughhousing as part of toxic masculinity, when in fact roughhousing is a crucial tool in brain development. Every time I think about that commercial, it just drives me crazy. I'll never forget seeing that during the Super Bowl. I was ready to throw my beer at the TV. Interestingly, when Dove and similar companies have created commercials that approach girls and women's lives from a clearly political lens, they have done so by seeking to find the beauty in girls and women rather than leading with and ending with basically negative portrayals of girls and women. And taking the opposite course, Gillette asks men to be accountable for bad behavior. That part of the ad is admirable and useful. I got no problem being accountable for bad behavior. I got a problem when they're trying to portray boys just doing their natural things, roughhousing and all that, in a negative light and calling it toxic. That's a bunch of horse shit. And I'll say that to my dying breath. Gillette does not understand how important masculine development is to human development and survival. They especially do not understand that above and all else, males who seek to be masculine will not countenance violence against women and children. Masculinity is a protective force against violence, not an invitation to commit violence. Exactly. Generally speaking, who are bullies, guys? They're weak guys. They're insecure, they're weak, they're fearful, and probably they've been bullied by like their dads or somebody else. People that are strong, they don't bully. Not at all. We need strong boys to become strong men to deal with men like that. Masculinity and masculine norms can handle academic and social dialogue. As society forces, they can handle very useful calls for expansion beyond some stereotype of self. But masculinity is fragile too, as millions of failing males prove. It is too fragile to be accused of our nation's smartest people of crimes it has not committed. And our sons are too fragile to survive and thrive if those who ostensibly care for them, from academics to businesses, to schools, to communities, suggest our sons' biggest crime is their very existence. Exactly. As McGill University researcher and co-author of Replacing Misandry, Paul Nathanson has pointed out, this will lead to self-hatred in boys and men, which is very dangerous indeed. Bad men do bad things, and some men never grow beyond a small self. To pretend masculinity has caused these social and personal conditions is to distract ourselves from huge areas of real pain all around us. Let's stop treating masculinity as our enemy. Let's start helping boys to grow into the good men their own personal character and drive want them to be. This guy's great. I'm really glad I found this article last night. Response to the American Psychological Association guidelines on practice with boys and men. And we're going to get some examples here. It says, Tony was a 14-year-old boy who walked into my counseling office with a lot of issues. Short for his age and not yet visibly pubescent, he had been diagnosed with ADHD and his parents felt he might be depressed. He was like hundreds of boys and men I've seen in my clinical practice. If the counselor knew how to work with him as a young male, Tony would work with me. If the counselor didn't, he wouldn't. After normal intake, the first thing we did was walk outside talking shoulder to shoulder. Because the male brain is often cerebellum dependent, and it says in parentheses, it often needs physical movement in order to connect words to feelings and memories. We sat down only after our walk finished. By then, a great deal had happened for Tony. Once in our chairs, we talked with ball in hand, tossing it back and forth like fathers often do with children. I love playing catch in the backyard with my dad. That was some of the best memories I have as a little kid, just in the backyard, tossing the baseball or the football back and forth with my dad. It's amazing what that does. It was a really great bonding experience. This cerebellum and spatial involvement help the male brain move neurotransmission between limbic system and frontal lobe, where word centers are. We also use visual images, including video games, to trigger emotional centers. And we discovered manhood and masculinity a great deal, since Tony and every boy yearns for mentoring in the human ontology on how to be a man. Exactly. I've seen hundreds of girls and women in my therapy practice. Few of them need walking, physical movement, and visual spatial stimulation to help access memories, emotions, and feelings, because most girls are better able to access words for feelings than boys and men while sitting still. Girls and women have language centers on both sides of the brain connected to memory, emotion, and sensory centers, while the male brain mainly has these word centers to the left. This is a very interesting article. Without our realizing it, over the last 50 years, we set up counseling and psychological services for girls and women. Come into my office, we say kindly. Sit down. Tell me how you felt or feel. Boys and men fail out of counseling and therapy because we have not taught our psychologists and therapists about the male and female brain. Only 15% of new counselors are male, leaving 85% female. Clients in therapy skew about 80% female. Males are dragged in by moms or spouses, but generally leave an environment unequipped for the nature of males. Yeah, guys going to therapy pretty much are dragged in by their moms and their wives. It's pretty funny. But ever watch The Sopranos? Tony Soprano went in there because his wife dragged him in. Well, no, his wife didn't drag him in, but she knew he was unhappy, and it was his doctor that did it. But then his wife was so happy when he was seeing a therapist, but she didn't know it was a woman at first. I haven't watched that show in ages. It goes on. Male nature, the male brain, the need to contextualize boyhood into an important masculine journey to manhood are missing from the new American Psychological Association's guidelines for practice with boys and men. While the document calls attention to male developmental needs and crisis in our culture, which I celebrate as a researcher and practitioner in the field, it then falls into an ideological swamp. Males, we are told, are born with dominion created by their inherent privilege. Back to the privilege thing. Females and males are victims of this male privilege. The authors go further to discuss what they see as the main problem facing males. Too much masculinity. This isn't him saying this. This is other people saying this. They call it the root of all or most male issues, from suicide to early death to depression to substance abuse, to reason for the family breakups to school violence, school failure to violence. They claim that fewer males than females seek out therapy or stay in therapy and health services because of masculinity. Never is a skewed female-friendly mental health environment discussed. The assumption that all systems skew in favor of males, not females, is so deeply entrenched in our culture today, the AP never has to prove it. Yeah, that's what's been going on, babbling on about the privilege. Perhaps most worrisome, the APA should be a science-based organization, but its guidelines lack hard science. Ruben and Rachel Gurr, Tracy Shores, Luann Brisenstone, Sandra Whiteson, Daniel Amen, and the hundreds of scientists worldwide who use brain scan technology to understand male-female brain difference do not appear in the guidelines. Practitioners like myself and Leonard Sachs, MD and PhD, have conducted multiple studies in science-based practical application of neuroscience. To male nurturance in schools, homes, and communities are not included. Include our mainly socio-psychologists who push the idea that maleness is basically socialized into masculinities that destroy male development. Stephanie Pappas on the APA website sums up APA's enemy. Traditional masculinity, marked by stoicism, competitiveness, dominance, and aggression, is on the whole harmful. This is them saying that. And it's bullshit, guys. We all know it's bullshit. What's harmful is what we have right now. All these whiny little boys. It's gone too far. Our job as therapists is, the authors teach, to remove all but the ideological sound masculinities from boys and men, and specifically remove masculinities that involve competition, aggression, strength, and power. Well, that's what sums up to be a man, okay? And you don't have guys that don't have these things, you got a problem. But now they're trying to put it all on women, and everything's all out of whack. How much longer can our society and its professionals pretend we are developing a saner society by condemning the very parts of males that help them succeed, heal, and grow? Exactly. You hear the sirens? The cops are coming for me. I'm speaking out. In the same way that it's misogynistic to claim femininity is inherently flawed, it is supposedly misandrist to claim masculinity is also thus. I am an example. I was a S-word abuse victim in my boyhood and a very sensitive boy. My 10 years of healing from the abuse came from tapping into masculine strength as it did by expanding my sense of self in the 1970s towards the feminine. Both are good, neither is zero-sum, but I could not have healed without masculinity. Part of the problem with the APA's guidelines is that, from a neuroscience point of view, masculinity is not as limited as Papa's assertion. Masculinity is an amalgam of nature, nurture, and culture. Masculinity, including traditional masculinity, is an ontology in which a male of any race, creed, ethnicity, or kind commits to developing and exercising strength, perseverance, hard work, love, compassion, responsibility for others, service to the disadvantaged, and self-sacrifice. What professional in the psychology field would not want to embolden these characteristics? Most fathers and mothers would want counselors to embolden them because, despite the APA's author's lip service to fathering in the document, fathering and mentoring boys is masculine development has been proven one of the most important detriments in child safety, school success, and emotional and physical health. Not the erasure of masculinity, but the accomplishment of it is required, including inside the counselor's office and while walking along the street. If we are to save our sons from the crisis outlined by the APA's guidelines, without counselors and parents understanding how to raise and protect masculine development and the male brain, boys like Tony drift in and out of video games, depression, substances, half-love, and often violence. Exactly. Guys, we got to be role models, okay? Even if you don't have any sons, in one way or another, by you just bettering yourself in so many ways, taking charge, being a leader, being more masculine, not being a bully, not being a dick, just being more masculine, embracing your true nature, you're setting the example. And for you fathers out there, you got to set this example for your boys. And if any of the schools that your boys go to or any organizations they deal with promote this bullshit this guy's talking about and calling out on, you got to call it out too. You got to speak up because things have gotten way too far. And if that means you're going to take some heat for it, then you got to do it, but do it for your sons. Or your grandfathers, do it for your grandsons, and so forth. I take heat all the time, but I'm trying to do my part to help out here. The masculine journey is not perfect, and expanding what masculine and man mean to a given family and self is a point well made by the AP authors, and an important one. But trying to hook mental health professionals into the ideological trinity of ideas ignores one of the primary reasons for the existence of our psychological profession, not just to help girls, women, and everyone on the gender spectrum, but empowered and find themselves, but also to help boys and men find their strength, their purpose, and their success in what it will be. For them, a complex male journey through an increasing difficult lifespan. So guys, I thought that was a great article. I saw that last night and I was thinking, damn, I got to bump this up because it really is good. And I've talked about this in other videos. I've done a few videos on the subject. But again, we all know darn well that the pendulum has gone way too far. And now we have all this generation of boys that are so in touch with their feelings and emotional and behave feminine. And all these girls, they behave masculine. It's all out of whack. And is it any wonder that so many young teenagers that are normally, their hormones are growing crazy, don't want to have anything to do with each other? There's no attraction there. There's no polarity, right? And sure, you got a lot of boys waking up to female nature and saying, hey, I don't want to deal with the crap my dad dealt with or my older brothers, but they would still have the the hormones, but for them, a lot of them, there isn't a whole lot of attraction because so many women behave masculine, and for the girls, so many boys are becoming so feminine. And we need stronger boys to become strong men, like I've said, for so many good reasons. So it's our job to talk about these things, call bullshit when we see it. And again, for all you guys that are fathers, grandfathers, uncles, you got to do your part to speak up. If they're in schools and they're promoting this shit, you got to speak up. It's the only way. So, all right, guys, that's it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this. Let me know what you guys have observed, whether you're parents or grandparents or whatever. And for you younger guys, let me know about you guys in school that what you've experienced and what they're trying to promote. Because I know you guys, this is for you guys that are in college, this is pretty recent. You guys dealt with this shit in elementary school, junior high school, and now college. Love to hear about it. And be sure to like the video, share with your friends, and subscribe. And I'll catch you next time.